Electric vehicles, it looks like we now have a price war going on that side of the market. Tesla sort of leading the way there, but a lot of other EV makers are cutting prices.
In today's video, the theme is contrast. We have an analyst who actually understands Tesla, making some reasonable and fair points, and we also have an intellectually dishonest Tesla Perma-Bear, saying things that he probably doesn't believe and that most definitely don't make any sense at all. Also, a heads up, I've just posted my top 7 books read in 2023 so far, exclusively on Patreon. And by the way, a very, very spicy video will be dropping within the next 24 hours. No way I could post it on YouTube, so if you're a member of Patreon, you'll know where to find it, and stay tuned.
Get you up to speed on Tesla, trending ticker on Yahoo Finance today. The stock moving down more than 4% today. Up, though, almost 70% this year so far, defying the odds after that rocky 22. And continued issues in the new year. Joining us now with more on this is Craig Irwin, Roth Capital Partners Senior Research Analyst. Craig, good to see you, my friend. You've got a neutral rating, an $85 price target. Why? And what do you make of the rally so far with Tesla this year?
So Tesla had some pretty violent moves to the downside last year. A lot of that was due to Twitter and people really wanting Mr. Musk to focus his time at Tesla. You know, okay, he's going to spend more time than we like at Twitter. But Tesla's getting the right attention. So, you know, you've seen the value come back into the stock that came out primarily because of Twitter. The negative revisions to forecasts, you know, expectations of 1.5 million being brought down to 1.4 million. You know, that's still some pretty amazing growth. You know, these guys are category king in the EVs. So, you know, a lot of people want to own Tesla. But, you know, we're bearish on Tesla. We see Tesla's a great company, but we think, you know, there's going to be some real winners. The 100 or so EV models are supposed to hit the road this year. Many of those will be just as compelling as the Lightning or, you know, the Porsche Taycan or, you know, pick your car, right? Kia's got some great cars that are selling well. The Mach-E. Tesla's going to have some real pressure in the back end of this year, just like they faced in the back end of last year. And, you know, that is going to impact margins. Now,
all right, hold up a second. Now, Craig says a lot of dumb shit, and honestly, I don't think he ever believes anything he says. But regardless, I'm still going to debunk this because this makes no logical sense. According to Craig, the competition is finally going to come for Tesla instead of all over itself in the back half of this year. And therefore, that's going to put pressure on Tesla's margins. So let's think through the logic of this and determine whether or not it makes any fucking sense. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Tesla's the only company outside of China today profitably making EVs, period. Bear with me, folks. If true, it is. If Tesla's already making approximately 25% gross automotive margins on the average vehicle they sell today, industry leading, 2 to 3 times more than a typical automotive manufacturer. If they're already making industry leading margins, they are, and Tesla's so-called competition coming all over Tesla in the back half of this year is making 0% margins, in fact, negative margins on every vehicle sold. Spoiler alert, they are. Yeah, they're literally losing money on every vehicle sold. Just to compete with Tesla on price, these companies need to sell vehicles for major losses. How in the flying fuck is this going to negatively impact Tesla's margins? It's Tesla's so-called competition that have a problem with margins because they need to compete with Tesla, who've already achieved scale, volume, profitable production of compelling electric vehicles globally. The only way for these companies to compete with Tesla is to compete on price, but by competing on sale price, they lose catastrophic amounts of money. The consumer wins. They're buying a car for less than it costs the company to make, but this doesn't put any pressure on Tesla margins. But let's be honest, Craig already knows that. He's just talking shit for whatever reason.
Margins have been overlooked for the near term. We're going to have some chunky margin pressure, and everybody's waving that away to buy back into the stock, you know, just trying to pick a bottom. You know, our view is, you know, we should be cautious, and you're probably better off in some of the other names in the space, you know, given that, you know, there will be multiple winners in, you know, a category that, you know, is inevitable.
So I got a question. Is Craig Irwin an idiot? I'm just kidding. That was a trick question. No, but the serious question though, did he really just say that there's better names as in other stocks in the EV space that would be better to invest in than Tesla? Tesla being the only company outside of China that has somehow miraculously defied the odds, traversed the chasm, somehow made it to the other side. Profitable, compelling, high volume electric vehicle production. They've defied the odds, escaped death. Near certain death. They've made it to the other side. They're now essentially financially bulletproof, at least for the next decade or two. Who knows what happens after that? It's as if Craig seems to be under the impression that any company that attempts to produce electric vehicles will defy the same odds and somehow make it to the other end in one piece. Craig is wrong here. Whether it's a legacy automotive company or an EV startup, almost every single one of these companies is going to go bankrupt this decade. Craig thinks it's better to bet on one of those companies that has extremely high odds of going bankrupt than the clear, category-killing, dominant leader. Is there any way I can short Craig Irwin?
Well, Craig, let's talk a little bit more about two pieces of things you just said. One, the pressures that we could see on margins. How much pressure do you think we could potentially see? And then you said that Tesla, compared to some of the other, what you're calling winners out there, who do you think is going to beat Tesla?
Now, if I were a little bit more cynical, I might think that Craig Irwin doesn't actually believe anyone's going to beat Tesla. And when asked this question, he's going to have a difficult time conjuring up an answer that sounds like he believes it when he knows no one's catching up to Tesla. In fact, they're all probably going bankrupt. So given the fact that Craig very confidently just moments ago suggested betting on other companies beside Tesla, he won't stutter, there'll be no delay, he'll instantly answer this question confidently because he knows the answer and he truly believes what he's saying, right?
Yeah, so a lot of the benefit that's come back into momentum in the stock is price cuts, right? A lot of people jumped in for price cuts. So people that are buying on price cuts are not exactly prone to option things heavily. So, you're mixing towards a lower margin crowd of buyers with an already margin direct price cut. So I think we're probably looking towards, more like 1,000 basis points in margin degradation over the next couple of quarters instead of, basically 500, 600, 700. That's heavy pressure. Now, a lot of people want to look beyond that and say, wave it away, because they've done a great job on margins, but not so great if you take out the ZEV credits and all the other credits. And then you factor where the mix is going to go in 24 and 25. They have to launch the mini car. That's going to be a fundamentally lower margin car.
Now, it is true Tesla will be launching a more affordable vehicle. However, assuming that it will have lower gross automotive margins seems quite the leap. Don't get me wrong, probably less profit per vehicle, because the sale price is lower. But in proportion, I expect these vehicles will have comparable margins to Tesla's 3 and Y. Craig seems to be making a lot of big assumptions. What's that saying about assumptions and assuming things?
And all their vehicles are starting to look pretty long in the tooth. So that also doesn't speak highly of attractive margins going forward. So, yes, it's a growth stock. It's valued like a growth stock, and they have got growth going again, and they deserve credit for that. But I think that they're going to have a hard time really sustaining a multiple over the longer term, particularly given that the competition is looking very credible.
You had me at Ford F-150 Lightning. That's always how you get my attention. But when it comes to GM versus Ford in that EV space, how has that narrative changed given the recall there at Ford? And how do you think that story plays itself out this year?
EVs are tough, right? This is new technology. There's a lot of learning that happens. We would prefer that none of it really makes its way into the public. I mean, I guess Tesla just had a fairly chunky recall of its FSD, full self-driving. I think of that as a misnomer. But the reality is there's learning that goes along, after these vehicles are launched. Fortunately, very little of it is catastrophic lessons. Most of it is fairly low cost to address. It doesn't bother me. I've driven an EV now for the last couple of years. My car's had a couple of recalls. It doesn't bother me. I just kind of accept this the way that we do when, there's recalls of the combustion engine vehicles that we own. And many of those do have recalls to address issues that, the OEMs would prefer never happen as well.
If ever we needed a case study in intellectual dishonesty, that was it. Earlier, we hear Craig claiming that the competition's finally coming, that's going to put pressure on Tesla margins. Then the anchor on Yahoo Finance goes, hey, Craig, you keep saying about the competition coming, but didn't Ford just have to recall, as in physically recall, F-150 Lightnings, their first electric pickup truck, because of potential battery fire issues? Did that happen, Craig? What do you have to say about that? Craig, in response, goes, yeah, Tesla had a massive recall of software. Tesla's doing over-the-air updates, which in and of itself speaks volumes if you take the time to think about it. No one else can even do them. And Ford, their flagship electric pickup truck, they recently announced a physical recall due to an issue with batteries that could cause a fire, like a major safety issue. Craig downplays, everyone, they're all going to have, it's new. Tesla had one software, but they still had a recall. Just so intellectually dishonest. Craig knows these automotive manufacturers are tripping themselves up, don't know what the they're doing, there's going to be more and more issues, and then goes on to say, look, my electric vehicles had multiple recalls. Physical recalls, by the way, I'm sure, since no one else can do over-the-air software updates. But I don't mind the recalls. Recalls happen. It's fine. Everyone, legacy or new EV startup, is going to have the same teething pains that Tesla did 10, 15 years ago because they're only just getting started now. There are going to be loads of recalls, safety concerns, issues, software problems, cars bricking themselves. Just a day or two ago, I watched a video from the folks over at Now You Know. Their Rivian R1T bricking in cold weather. Literally couldn't even unlock the fucking vehicle. Couldn't even unlock it to get it towed. And this is Rivian. They've been around almost as long as Tesla. And they can't even get their fucking software to work. Craig is living in La La Land.
Let's talk about buying a smaller ticket item then. Production troubles hitting the auto industry from several directions, all while automakers keep a watchful eye on costs. This as the U.S. continues its push for companies to build EV components of its products domestically. So where does all this shake out for the road ahead in the auto industry? Here to discuss is Michelle Krebs, Cox Automotive Executive Analyst. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. In the meantime, when we're talking about electric vehicles, it looks like we now have a price war going on that side of the market. Tesla sort of leading the way there, but a lot of other EV makers are cutting prices. How far do you think that price war goes, and what is it going to mean for market share?
Well, one of the reasons we are seeing this price war is that, Tesla dominates the market, at least here in the U.S., not so much in China. It has its competitors there. But they are losing market share, even though they still dominate a huge amount of the market. So they have cut prices, and we are seeing other automakers introduce EVs that are cost less. And so I don't know if I'd call it a full-blown price war just yet, but certainly some skirmishes here and there.
But what will we learn about the consumer within that skirmish on price, especially considering the number of different packages that are key to margins for many of the companies that are now putting some type of electric vehicle out on the market, whether that electric vehicle has historical brand equity in the name or whether it's a brand new offering?
Well, we are just seeing a lot more variety of what automakers are offering. We've got everything from smaller, from sport utility vehicles, which are the most popular segment, up to pickup trucks. So there's a much wider range of choice for the consumer. And I think that will lead to some price reductions. And we also know they need to proliferate EVs further. They have to be more affordable. The average EV price in the U.S. last year was well over $60,000, and that's just out of reach for ordinary Americans.
So, while we're on the topic of affordability and prices and the average new vehicle in the United States, I thought I'd share this. It's never been cheaper to buy a Tesla. We're looking at Tesla's US price premiums versus the average new car. Model Y in green, Model 3 in black, and the line we see running along the bottom here, horizontally, that is the average new vehicle sold in the United States. Notice something. Today, Tesla's Model 3 costs $4,930 less than the average new car in the United States. Not the average electric car, the average new car. Take a moment to let the implications sink in. If the average new car in the United States costs more than a Tesla Model 3, then that means the average person in the United States buying a new vehicle can afford a Model 3. And Model Y is only just above this average price. People aren't really getting the implications of this yet, but they're important.
That's where some of the tax credits will kick in as well.
And speaking of the tax credits, a lot of them have different measures attached to them. In other words, a lot of the components have to be made in the U.S., for example. And we are getting more and more news from the automakers about plants that they are planning or supply chain changes that they are planning in the U.S. What is that going to do to the economics, and how long is that going to take?
Well, the tax credits are pretty complicated because it depends on the vehicle, the price of the vehicle, where the vehicle is made, where the battery's made, and eventually where the components for the battery are made. So it's not easy to figure that all out. But we certainly know from different surveys that people will be moved a little bit by those tax credits, by the potential of that.
Though not having the highest market share in China, can Tesla, in the reopening and perhaps the wave of purchases that might be made in electric vehicles, can they be the best market share gainer over the course of this reopening process?
I'm not an expert on China. I don't think that they'll gain share here in the U.S. They'll certainly still be the dominant player. I mean, even their sales will increase. They will still dominate. It's just that once they had 100% of the market, that's not sustainable. So that market share will come down, but they'll still be the dominant player for sure, with higher sales and a very high market share.
Let's zero in a little bit more on Tesla here in the U.S. because there has been some negative press around them recently, a recall, whatever the company itself wants to call it, right? It has to issue that over-the-air update for its quote-unquote full self-driving. California has also seen some more negative Tesla numbers. Do you think that that is going to affect demand overall for Tesla?
Any kind of negative press certainly hasn't hurt sales before.
Amazing. Someone in the finance media talking about Tesla who actually gets it. No amount of negative press in the past has prevented Tesla from selling every fucking vehicle they've ever made throughout the company's history. Just to illustrate the point, perception versus reality. Negative perceptions and whether or not that has a negative impact. Does anyone remember Orange Man Bad? During his presidential campaign, leaked audio, grab him by the pussy? Seemed like bad press, didn't it? Not long after that, the guy's the president of the United fucking States. Now, did this bad press hurt or help Orange Man Bad, or was it neutral? I'll leave that up to you guys and girls to determine, but I just wanted to throw that out there. If you can grab him by the pussy and still get elected to president of the United States, it is possible for a company to have a little bit of bad press here and there and still continue to sell every vehicle they make. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's probably easier for an automotive company to keep selling every vehicle they make than for somebody like Orange Man Bad to still somehow be elected as president of the United States after such locker room talk.
Last summer, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, we saw the perception and consideration for Tesla drop through a variety of surveys, but they still posted very strong sales. So I don't think it will necessarily affect their sales. I think, more it'll be about the competition in the marketplace.
And Michelle, as we talk about electric vehicles, and we talk about them almost daily at this point, we still should note, despite all the grand plans, right, they still account for less than 10% of U.S. sales. What's going to be the tipping point?
About 6%, yes.
6%, right. So they're small. What's going to be the tipping point here? Is it going to be cost, or is there something else that is going to switch what consumers are willing to buy?
A couple things. The EV charging infrastructure is critical to proliferating EVs, and it's starting to improve, but we're hearing lots of complaints about chargers that don't work. There are not enough of them, so that is absolutely key, because that still is a concern.
Except for Tesla, who've already built out the world's most comprehensive and reliable charging network, which will be opening up in the United States. 7,500 Tesla chargers will be available to all third-party electric vehicles, I believe, by the end of next year. In other words, the charging issue is no longer going to be a charging issue, even for Tesla's incompetent competition. They'll just be using Tesla's network, not their own.
And then affordability. Affordability is also key to proliferating. We've got to see more affordable to mainstream Americans, see that accessibility before we'll see a proliferation of EVs. When that tipping point will be, that's a little hard to say right now.
I can say when that will be. We just saw Tesla's Model 3 already over $4,000 cheaper than the average new vehicle in the US, and at Tesla Investor Day 2023, in a matter of days, Tesla is extremely likely to unveil their next-gen vehicle, a much more affordable, fully electric vehicle. That is the mic drop moment. That's when EVs become a thing that some people can afford to a thing that almost everyone can afford. Now, this is the part of the video where I'd ordinarily encourage you guys and girls to try Athletic Greens AG1 so you can start feeling and performing your best. But instead, I'm not going to do that today. You're going to do it for me. On screen now. After taking AG1 for about 45 days, I honestly can't remember feeling this well, both physically and mentally, ever. Not my words, your words. I am working out, my mind is sharper, feel less anxious, motivated to drive my business, start other businesses, etc. Thanks for promoting this. Well, you're welcome. That is exactly why I'm promoting it, to try and help you guys feel and perform your best. Of course, this particular user may be insane and deluded and imagining everything, or maybe they're honestly conveying their own experience. On to another one. I've been drinking AG1 since early January, and my fatigue has dramatically decreased, and my energy, but possibly more importantly, my motivation has increased. I'm so much more productive. Thanks, Stephen. Once again, you're welcome. So, I'm now on my third day of AG1, and I have to admit, I really feel a difference. I'm sure it doesn't work that fast, but wow, I feel like it does. It actually tastes really good too, which I was wondering about. I could keep going for days, but I'll save those testimonials for another video. The point I'm making here is you don't need to take my word for it. Credibility matters a lot. I know some of you are super skeptical, so Rather than listening to what I've got to say, how about some people who've taken me up on this recommendation and are benefiting personally? In fact, thanking me for promoting this. At this stage, most of you guys and girls will know the perks. Promotes gut health, immunity, boosts energy and recovery. Athletic Greens AG1 is packed full of 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food source nutrients. It has prebiotics, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and adaptogens, and it's a great way to fill in nutritional gaps and optimize your overall well-being. And if you head to athleticgreens.com/SMR or use the link in the pinned comment, get yourself a 1-year free supply of vitamin D3 and K2. So what are you waiting for? Head to athleticgreens.com/SMR or use the link in the pinned comment and let me know how you're feeling in a few weeks' time. If your results are anything like the folks we've just heard from, you too may be thanking me for promoting this stuff so much. And lastly, don't forget to head over to Patreon if you can handle it. I've just posted the top 7 books I've read this year so far. And as I mentioned, an extremely spicy video is dropping in the next 24 hours. And there's no way I could get away with posting that on YouTube. So, see you over on Patreon. Love ya.